Alrighty, so pretty similar comps. One light tank. So a lot of this depends on whether your light tanks surf or not. Fiery Salient and Prokrovka in general, it's one of those maps where light tanks have a disproportionate effect on the outcome of the game. So, playing from the south, you can play through the 6-line area right here. It's probably the easiest place for a bottom tier medium tank to play through. You don't really want to play the hill from the south. I don't really feel like that's a good play. So it's either 6-line or you come out here to counter scout if you do have surfing. But if you don't have surfing, it's kind of pointless to counter scout. That guy may or may not surf. I suppose we will find out. And then I generally find it best to come up through this side if you are not the light tank, because a lot of times what their light tank will do is they'll loop through this area right here, and so you don't want to get caught coming in. Oh, you got a poking spotter. Oh no, he's sort of surfed. That's not how I would have done it, but he didn't get punished for it, and that's what's important. And so this is an important piece of intel, right? To know that their IS-3s went over, and it's not just what he saw, it's what he didn't see that's important as well, right? You didn't see any of their tank destroyers go over, and that's important to how you interpret what you're going to do in this game, because then the basic rationale is that the tank destroyers are going to be either back here someplace, most probable, or maybe even back here someplace, less probable. So, like, when you have that type of knowledge, what do you not want to do? You do not want to peek up over here where you can get shot by those guys over there. Just as a heads up.
We didn't even dent them.
But you didn't even dent them. Which is disappointing, but them's the breaks. Oh, and you don't want to sit here like this. Oh, look at that track. Pro. And then, so you're the only tank here, which is fine, it's not that big of a deal. But so the way that you play this 6-line area is that there's basically an area from right about right here to about right here that's almost completely safe from anybody who doesn't literally just surf up over there. So you basically want to hang out in this area because that allows you to shoot the hill really easily. You want to shoot down this yellow house when you get a chance, but you'll see why. You sent a lot of your team down to this 1-2 line, which happens. And again, remember, this is not really a peek and poke tank, particularly in a bottom tier game, so you don't want to do what you're doing. Especially you don't want to play high when you're lit, because the hill can shoot you just as easily as you can shoot the hill. But you haven't been punished for it yet, so what you gonna do? Oh man, here he comes. Oh, that is not the right play for him, but if that's how he wants to play it, right? If he wants to come all the way over to get there, then you gotta let him. The problem with his position is that it's really easy for these guys up here to shoot him, it's really easy for these guys up here to shoot him, and it's really easy for him to get arty, and he's just not nimble enough to do that type of maneuver. But if that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do. You still have a lot of your team in the back. It's not really incumbent on you to do the spotting here. Oh, here we go. It's coming upon you to deal the damage, though. You need to be looking at that. And then here's where the yellow house is about to come into play. Oh, not yet.
Penetration.
Oh, yellow house. Which is why we always shoot down the yellow house.
Enemy hit.
I wouldn't worry about the 4202. Shoot down that yellow house, my man. Make your life easier. The yellow house doesn't really protect you, the yellow house really protects that. So generally what I'll do is I'll load an HE at the start of the game and I'll If there's no light tank to use it on, then I will use it on the yellow house, because with one HE shell, I can take down both pieces of the yellow house. Lol. And you keep scrolling back, which I'm not entirely sure why. You're wasting time. I would also shoot down that other piece of the yellow house, but that's just me. You got some slow rollers kind of going up over here, so in theory you could come over there and help them push, but they don't really look like the pushing type. And also, as I detailed earlier, that's not going to be a very good alley to push. Why? How do I know this? How do I know? Am I cheating? How do I know that their tank destroyers are back there? Like, why is it that I believe it? Not just because that's where people like to hide, but what do I have some other piece of information that has suggested to me that maybe their tank destroyers are back here? And the answer is yes, right? How do I know that? Because I didn't see them coming over here, right? When our guy did his scout loop, and this is the purpose, the importance, the reason why intel is important is that you know what's over here. You're still doing a little bit too much scrolling for me. I don't think that's entirely necessary. I would shoot down the yellow house and just sit here, zoomed in up here. Like these guys have poked up a couple of times, but they've shown no will to do anything. Like their poking is pretty ineffectual. This is absolutely not what you want to do.
We've hit them, but we didn't
Lol.
penetrate their armor.
That yellow house, man, gets you every time. Oh, I think he shot down the yellow house for you. Oh, fantastic. I wouldn't worry about these guys on the ridges. Remember, it's really easy for your guys on the other side to shoot them. It's really difficult for you to shoot them. Unfortunately, your spotter is about to die. He keeps rubbing up against something. Like, I don't think any of this scrolling back's there. So you can actually shoot these guys through this entire window from yellow house all the way to this little building right here. Just so you know. And unfortunately that building is indestructible, so you can't do anything about that one. Unfortunately, your tank destroyers are bleeding out on that other side. These guys back here aren't doing a whole lot either, but there's not. Oops, wrong button. There's not a whole lot that you can do about that. Again, this isn't. It's not like this is a super awesome scouting tank or anything like that. You don't want to get lit here. Again, so the whole idea is that you can shoot the hill from the 6th line, but that also means that the hill can shoot you. Looks like their guys backed off here, which is theoretically good. Oh, look at this speedy scouting run. Look how fast this and maneuverable this tank is. Yes, that was a little bit of an exaggeration. But again, that's why there's a lot of tanks that cannot do the scouting, which is why it's so incredibly important to be able to play your light tank effectively. But again, most light tank players are not actually good at playing light tanks. It's mostly because they watch Germ play light tanks, I think. And they think that light tanks are all about boosting. So I'm not entirely sure what you're aiming at here. Like that no enemy is going to appear in this bush right here. Most likely. I can't guarantee it, but most likely no enemy is going to actually appear. You want to actually be someplace where you're ready to shoot something, because you're not a guy that's on the front line here, right? They haven't really shown the will to come after you. So you need to be ready to help shoot these guys that are going to be on the front line. Your Chrysler went in the bowl, but that's not going to be a very good position for him. So the interesting thing is you can't actually really get very good shots through the rest of this from this side. It's just not. There's just not a whole lot there. So you actually need to wait for that JT to move forward, which is fine, because if it looks like he is interested in moving forward, then by all means. More fuel to the fire. You do need to be a little bit patient on maps like this, especially when you have, you know, a lot of your team on that 1-2 line, and you anticipate that a lot of their team is going to be on that 1-2 line. Unfortunately, for the purposes of replays, we're going to go do this a little bit faster. Oh, yeah. He's tall enough that you can get a little shot there. Oh, fantastic. Usually, it's not real easy to get shots between that, or after that house that I had indicated earlier. But if you can, and again, like, I don't really see any purpose to being this low on the hill. Like, all you're doing by being this low on the hill is not being ready to do anything useful. Oh look, the JPE showed up. And then this, I don't think is, depending on, not entirely sure what you think you're doing. You don't want to really push through here. Like, again, this is not really a really fast scouting tank. Like, in theory, you could quote unquote surf, but yeah, no, this is not gonna work out well for you. And then again, once they control the 1-2 line, which is somewhat predictable, once they control the 1-2 line, the field is forfeit. You cannot play field if they control the 1-2 line, because they will just wallop you. So you just want to get out of the field if you are on the field side.
Enemy armor is damaged. Penetration.
And you do not want to poke high on this ridge, because I guarantee you there's a lot of dudes back there. Oh, he bounced the 4005 AP shell. Why is the 4005 shooting AP? It's pretty bad. But again, that's why you don't want to be on this in the field once they control that 1-2 line. It's just too easy for them to smoke you there. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to win the other side. I mean, it's not exactly rocket science. The last gasp of a dying team. And again, I always think that it's poor 1-2 line play, and to an extent it is. But I mean, a lot of this, in my opinion, could have been alleviated by good scout play, and that's why scouts are inordinately important on this map, in my opinion.
Track it.
And anyways, this is why you don't stay in the field when they control the 1-2 line. Got it. Gotta take that shot. Oh, you gotta run away from that shot. Oh, the misses are real. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's predictable. Neither team really wanted to win that game, but lol. Did he have HE loaded for some reason? Alright, anyways. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that you could have done a whole lot differently there. I mean, a lot of it is micromanaging in terms of, like, if you were a higher tier tank, like let's say you were in the in a top tier medium or something like that, then you can potentially push through one side. But as a bottom tier medium, like, you have to stay off of that 1-2 line, because you know that's where their tank destroyers are, and you just hope that your guys don't trade over there quite as poorly as they did. But them's the breaks. Alrighty, and so if we look at the stats, Well, your Artie was doing some work. Unfortunately, the rest of your team, not quite as much. I don't really feel like their team played that very well either. But them's the breaks. Oh man, look at that! Look at that light tank performance on both teams. This GG, nice try. Alright, next we'll look at Captain's Sand River Bulldog. Oh, I heard a click. Yeah, there we go. Loaded in a little late. Pretty much same comps and counter. So you do want to play towards the goal a little bit. You're in a reasonably fast tank, so you don't have to worry about getting capped out per se, but you want to kind of have an idea of what goes down there. So I typically run this ridge right here at the start because this will tell you what goes to the south. If you understand how to play it, you can actually play this side of this ridge and get shots at these guys as they go out there, but that's a little bit more. Here, I'll show it to you if you go up here. So a lot of times what I'll do is, so the way that this hill works is that if you just surf this ridge, right, you can see the line and the ridge right there. So if you just surf this ridge right here, you'll be able to spot everything out here. You'll also be able to spot everything out here. But spotting things out here and out here aren't really nearly as important. So a lot of times what you can do is you can like literally just come drive over here, stop right about right here on this side of the ridge, and you can get spots and shots on these guys that cross through this area right here, and then you can basically duck back down over here and then do your surf. So like, oh man, so this is a pretty good surf. See, I can't really show it that well, but so the whole purpose of surfing is, or not the purpose, the whole technique to surfing is that you don't need to put your entire tank over the ridge. Like there's a detection, that's a little too zoomed in. All right. There's a detection point on your tank right here, right where the gun hits the mantlet, basically, and you can basically think of that as a big eye that's there, right? And so as long as that eye is out there, then you're gonna spot those tanks, right? So you don't need to drive your whole tank over. So this is a good example of a good technique. So good job. And this was an example of a bad technique. See how he drove his entire tank over, but he wasn't punished for it, so what are you gonna do? And then the vulnerability of this particular area is that as these guys cross through here, they can get shots at you just as easily as you get shots on them. So you need to be careful right here as their score tries to get you. Again, I don't know that that's what I would have done in a score, but them's breaks. And then I also think that it's worthwhile, like you didn't see much going down this side. You can actually come through this side over here to basically see what they've sent out on this side, or you come all the way down to the south. Generally climbing up into these hills is not useful for either team. There's not a whole lot of spotting to be done here. Especially if you get yourself stuck. Oh, this isn't a good play. This is bad. So this is some bad driving right here. Anyways, you'll see a lot of people get stuck up here, and I mean that in a figurative sense, in that they just kind of drive up here and they just kind of sit. We'll see how these guys are sitting in the back, trying to snipe the other guy, and that's pretty much the worst thing that you can do while the game is actually being won and lost elsewhere. But you'll see it a lot with these teams. You did not send one single person to the south, and it doesn't really seem like they sent anybody to the south. I wouldn't really worry about getting lit in a Bulldog at this range. And so you are headed out there, which is fine. It's no thing. We're gonna speed this up because even though the Bulldog is fast, it's not quite fast enough. So your team is bleeding out there, which is a thing. Okay. So you actually have a shot on him if you come back over here a little bit. You don't have to crest this hill in order to get a shot on him, is what I'm saying.
Let's find another target.
You did make it so that he can shoot you, though. Oh, you got this, Cromwell.
Target acquired. Target unlocked.
And then here's where it's important to be able to use the zoom. There you go.
Armor is hit. Ready to fire. Enemy is hit.
And used auto aim there, which I wouldn't necessarily be a fan of in this particular instance, but it hit him, so it's fine. You don't want to back up too much right here.
Penetration. Let's find another target. Permission to engage. Enemy armor is hit.
Oh man.
Penetration. Target lost. Target acquired.
I didn't really feel like it was necessary to push this guy, especially since you know that they have a 3485 over there. All right, I see the need for the auto aim, but I mean, if you're gonna auto aim, man, just drive. Don't stop running into things. The auto aim is full. Yeah, I think your LTTV might struggle there. Now run away! And you can make some progress outside of this K line, should you want. No, I don't really feel like it's necessary to go back. You've got all the advantages to outspot this guy by coming up over here and pinning him in his area. Like going backwards is never really a good idea, unless you're winning the other side, which you're not. Right, you basically sent all of your tanks in one direction and they're not doing well. So you might as well explore this other direction. I'm not entirely sure what you're afraid of. You should just go. There's nothing that guy can do about you. Nothing. And again, that's why we say you got to understand the matchups. Understand who has the advantage. Do you have the advantage, or does the T-34-85 have the advantage when you're at 450 meters? You have the advantage. You have a huge advantage. Who has the advantage? You or the KV-85 at this distance? You've got a huge advantage on the KV-85. Now, you don't want to drive any closer to the KV-85 because as you get closer, who's got the advantage? Not you. And that is what many people fail to quite grasp in this game.
Ready to fire. Enemy armor is hit.
Ruh-roh.
Enemy
Ruh-roh.
armor is damaged. Penetration.
Ah, LTTV rammed himself to death.
I don't see the target. Enemy armor is destroyed.
Oh well. You burned a lot of health there that you probably didn't need to. Again, there's no real reason for you to go and brawl those guys when you can just sit at range and shoot them for free. You can still push this K line if you wanted, although now you're going to be a little bit vulnerable to the T-71 should you want to play it. Looks like you're going to go the route of camp, though. Camping is not really a good option, particularly in light tanks, simply because, especially on these more open maps. If you're on a city map, you know, there's not a whole lot that you can do. But on these open maps, light tanks are king. And you got to play like you're the king. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of fear here. I think you just have to go and challenge the T-71 and hope that you can beat him. Like that's your route to victory here. Your route to victory is not wait until the rest of your team dies and then be like, all right, it's time to go. Oh, now you even know where the T-71 is. So why, I don't understand, why can't you push here now? Like, what's the reason for not doing it? And if your reason is, oh, well, I wanted to go help my team, then my question would be, well, then why didn't you help your team before? I mean, all that I see right now is just opportunism. It's like, oh, here's some guys I can shoot at from a distance that are shooting that I don't have to spot. But no, that's not your job. Your job is also not to shoot the 3485. Shoot that Scorpion. There you go. It's gonna be too late to save your team. And then now you can go camp. Now I'm okay with you camping. I still think that you're better off pushing out on the K line and forcing them to chase you down, but that's just me. Again, in a light tank, you always want to keep people as far away as possible.
Enemy armor is hit. Ready to fire. Penetration. Where'd they go? They're knocked out. Target acquired.
Get him! Get him!
Armor is damaged.
Oh, didn't get him.
We're done for. Everyone get out.
Yeah, I mean, for them really sending, I mean, they sent a couple of tanks here, but they sent some tanks here that weren't going to really be able to deal with you in range. So it felt like you could have dominated that K line a little bit easier. Like, you'll notice that how your team died. This is a pretty typical death for teams on Sand River, both in encounter and in standard mode. A lot of people like playing this north. I don't really feel like the north is where you win. Especially, you can win through the north, but the way that a lot of people play the north is not the way that you win, which is basically try to sit back in these hills and snipe from one side of the hills to the other side of the hills. Like, that's not really a winning formula for this game, especially when they have so much territory on the other side that was ripe for the taking. But all right, let's look at the stats. Yeah, you didn't get a whole lot out of your team, but again, that's kind of expected based upon their dispersion. Whenever you see teams like that, the reason why they go to those positions is because they're not very good players. But them's the breaks. And using auto-aim is fine. Again, I have no problem at all with you using auto-aim. Now, there's certain situations, particularly when you're shooting tanks that are moving and at range, where you don't want to use auto-aim because it's not going to be as efficient for you. But in those cases, a lot of times it's better to use auto-aim and then concentrate on your driving. Make sure you don't run into walls and rocks and things like that, other tanks. That's generally pretty important. And the other thing also is that, understand where your advantages are. Like, understand who you can bully, right? And you can bully every single tank on this map other than the other light tanks in the open, right? You have all the advantages in the open. Just play to that. GG. Nice try. Alright, and then next we'll look at Psycho's E50 on Erlenberg. Looks like another slow loader. Slightly. Alrighty. You've got a little bit more speed up top in the 140, but otherwise, not much. So you'll probably want to be able to play through this east side here, because a lot of the terrain that you're going to be up against, you know, the Kronbach can take on this side. It can sort of outduel you there. So you'll probably want to play, and generally what I'll do in a medium tank is play through this area early. I don't know about light tanks doing spotting. I don't think light tanks can do spotting. It's not really a thing. And then again, what you do want to do is you want to be high on this hill, because that's going to give you the best angle to shoot tanks. You don't necessarily need to be like in this bush. This guy's not a very good spotter. He's going to spot guys that are way too late. And again, so like this is one of those things that I talk about when I play artillery all the time, which is like you have to understand where the enemy is going to get lit based upon what your team is doing. Like where that T-49 was going, he wasn't going to light things that you were going to be able to shoot, really, right? And that's why when you light, you go up through this area right here so that you can light things before they get to an area where nobody can shoot them. And again, so what you don't want to do, now that you know that you're not going to get any lights on these guys out here, what you don't want to do is you don't want to stay here. Right? You're better off just go ahead and relocate now. You didn't get any free damage out of this. Your team didn't really send anything over here that can compete with what they're going to potentially send over here. So most of your guys went the other way. So I think it would probably be a better idea to go and win all through that other side. And then see how your light tank is up here, but all of you guys are back here. That's not a good sign for your light tank either. You'll see this a lot in these types of games where these guys all just sit in the back, and you want to try to avoid doing that. Typically speaking, teams that kind of hang out and allow the other team to get free position don't do as well. Like, none of these shots are good shots. But at least your T-49 is still alive. And this is the problem of playing back where you guys are playing, is that's, you know, they get more of an opportunity to whittle you down. See how their guys push forward here? But you guys are like you guys are on your side, relatively speaking, are way back there. So they're really being the aggressors on both sides, which is always to their advantage. Again, remember, this is a game about fighting, and generally speaking, the maps are designed to give the people who are willing to fight an advantage. Oh, hey, look, it's the spots that you wanted. Oh, I don't think this is a good idea. Going back to the well. They've got a lot back there, which is, again, good for them and bad for you. The bad news is your guys still haven't pushed on this other side, although these guys did that. We're in the back, have now moved forward, which is a start. Although your guys on this side have all moved back. And again, moving back from where you guys were to where these guys are here is a really incremental move. It doesn't actually help you that much. The best thing that you can possibly do, right, is back when your T-49 was up here, the best thing that you can possibly do is say, hey, T-49, we gotta bail off the side, and then have everybody just leave, because this cap is really easy to defend, but you don't want to basically be stuck in no man's land where you guys are, because like that E4 will eventually get pushed. Man, not sure where you think you're going. So a lot of people think that this area right here is good to play through. It is most definitely not. Even as they push up through here, it allows these guys back here to shoot you too easily, and you don't really get any shots that are actually good. Which is why playing through this side is not really an option. you're better off letting them push into you. But that's, you know, along those lines, that's why it's better to just let them have the cap and be like, all right, get on the cap. Go for it. Unfortunately. So, and the other thing is that, so you're doing this thing where that we see a lot, where not necessarily, you're not being proactive about anything. You're basically just kind of sitting around and hoping that the enemy sort of fruitlessly drives into you, and that's not really the case. And so, you know, you're better off getting a bigger margin between you and the enemy, forcing the enemy to come into some area where you actually have the advantage. Because, like, you'll notice that every single time you fought the enemy has had the advantage, and you don't want to always consistently give the enemy the advantage, because even if they're really horribly bad players, if you give them enough opportunities, then they're going to be able to make that. So, it is good that you left. Now, the bad news is that it took you way too long to leave and you lost half your health. And again, so what you don't want to do is you don't want to actually play this close to the cap. So much of this is understanding where you have your advantages, right? So you have an advantage, right? Let's go all the way back to the start of the game. You have an advantage where if your light tank lights them, that you can shoot them as they come up here. That's your advantage, right? You got that advantage on that side. They can't really do the same effectively going the other way. It's just not really a thing, right? That's one advantage that you have. The other advantage that you have is once they start pushing through here, you've got a narrow advantage where as they're pushing through this lane right here and as they're pushing through this lane right here, that you can get ass shot. Then that's pretty much it. Once they get up underneath you, you're done on this side, so you need to just go ahead and fall back. Now, when you fall back, you want to fall all the way back, because what is your next advantage? Your next advantage is when they try to cross through, either get on the cap or cross through this area right here, this big open area, where you can basically get all sorts of free shots on them. So the Euro 140 is on the cap, which, I don't really think is going to be a thing. You've still got a bunch of guys in the back here. And again, this is how you know the bad, because the bad likes to camp. So you're pushing off of this side, which isn't necessarily what you want to do. Again, you don't want to give up the cap per se. You can actually shoot that guy right there. Or you could have. I'm not entirely sure why you decided that you didn't want to. You're like, he's a one-shot. I should be nice. And so what you want to do is you want to actually play through this side right here on this red line, because as you creep forward here, you can light that area. You don't typically want to rely on your tank destroyers to do that type of spotting. And you can play these hills here as well because there is no arty, but it's not going to be as easy for your team to get shots. You can still be shot from this area right here, no matter where you are, but it will at least protect you from those guys on the cap. I prefer the range method. I think that's a much better method. There's going to be a guy right there. Again, moving back won't make it easier for you to spot him. Again, you could have played through this bowl area there, probably more effectively than going through this town area. This town area, you're really going to overexpose yourself. At least with the bowl area, you could be more or less whole. But you've chosen the way of pain. Alright, let's see how painful. Let's see how much the toll is going to be. So you know where he is, right? Again, this isn't... Excellent. It doesn't appear, it looks like they all went back, so that's the good news. So you can actually counter push through this side. It looks like your team is. Because I don't think you're going to get there in time to defend. And then so to counter push, like see how this Emil 2 is coming down there? You don't really want to do that unless you own this outside. So you want to come down and push down this 2 line here. You don't want to necessarily just drive willy-nilly across this field. They have volunteered to shrink down their map control, right? Their team was like, I don't really like map control. Let's reduce our map control to 1/4 and then see what happens. You can shoot that guy if you want it. You cannot shoot that guy if you want it. Well, I would shoot. Again, you're passing up a lot of shots on tanks that would be important for your team to kill. Like, it would be one thing if that T-28 Proto was, you know, off in the back or something and you decided that you didn't want to kill him. But when they're playing that frontline position like that, you've got to punish. And I'm not entirely sure why you're not punishing. And so this is going to be difficult. You're actually better off pushing through where this T-49 is going. Nicely done. And then you can actually play out through this field over here on this K line to get shots on those guys once it gets cleared. Unfortunately, your 10s did die. Again, you should play out through where this T-49 is playing through. Not entirely sure why you're killed the tank. You're about to lose the other flank, so yeah, you actually need to consider going back this way because those guys didn't really. You'll notice this a lot with teams, particularly pub teams. They lack discipline. There's no lane control. Just like their team basically left their entire back door open, your team is basically doing that now, where your team is leaving the entire back door open. So you don't want to play down through this sort of H line here. You actually want to come down towards this JK line over here. It is much safer. There's a big ridge right here which basically protects you. So you want to be out over here, not where you're at, because this can actually still be shot from over there pretty effectively. But once you're over here, then everything is a hull down shot, and you can get to a much closer range without basically imperiling yourself. You're basically waiting a little bit too much for your team to do stuff for you. You're like, oh man, I hope that T-95 spots something for me before he dies. But that's not really the way that this is going to work. Like, again, the E-50's got pretty good view range, so you can spot these guys into this area right here. You just need to play it better. So now you're voluntarily shrinking down your map control by driving towards these guys, which I don't necessarily feel is that good of an idea. If your idea was to protect the backside, you should have come back through this north bridge earlier. Crossing through this mid bridge now would not be a thing, and basically running up the middle like this is also extremely dangerous because anybody can like you and shoot you from this side. Like that, but luckily your superior armor protected you from everything except for the 103. But that's why you don't want to run this line right here, because this line is extremely overexposed. If you come back through here, you can challenge that much easier. And now you've basically pinned yourself in, which is not a very good option here. Because these guys will die, right? Because they don't really know how to play it. Ruh-roh. Yeah, that was a pretty fateful decision, unfortunately. Again, I feel like you needed to put yourself in a position where you could damage the enemy a little bit earlier. I don't really feel like playing through this side in the early game. Once you determined that your T-49 wasn't going to light for you, you should have just been like, all right, let's go see if we can win the other side. I feel like that determination should have been made earlier. Oh, look at your Udes go. He's got this game. He's gonna pull it out. And then again, there was a little bit too much. Once you guys started losing the side, there's a little bit too much of a situation where you guys were kind of hanging out and taking bad shots, and that didn't really help you. Again, it would have been better once you sort of lose that area up front. It would be better off, coming all the way out and getting out of there. And then again, remember spotting the this area right here, especially when there's no arty. You can do it by coming through this side right here. Nothing is really going to protect you from those guys back there. When there is arty, or if you're in a light tank, it's better to play this side out here. It's a little bit higher elevation. There's less bushes in the way, so you can spot into both sides of the cap pretty easily. And the other thing is that, so when you brought your E50 up here and you didn't spot anything on this side of the cap, but you know that somebody's on the cap because the cap timer is going, if I don't spot anybody on this side of the cap, which side of the cap do I think they're on? I think they're on this side of the cap, right? And so, you just have to basically maneuver yourself so that you can spot that side of the cap. Like it shouldn't be some great mystery of where that T-32 is hiding. If he's not here on this side, he's here on this side. So always keep that in mind when you're doing that. It's not always what you see. What you don't see is incredibly important. All right, so if we look at the stats. Neither team did super awesome. This SCRV just kind of sat in the back and farmed the whole game, which worked for him. But your team did get farmed, so what are you going to do? GG, nice try.